I promise, is the eve of the seventh angel of the book of Revelation, I want to just take a few minutes to, kind of look and see how we arrived at that fact. First thing I want to do is tell those of you who are here with us on television that, if you'd like to see our website, it's www.hiddenmeanings.com. Small letters, Hidden Meanings, the same as the name of the show. And, to tell you we've done very well with the website is, pretty mildly. We're at 245,600, closing in on 246,000 people who have visited it. So it's far beyond, my expectations, and it's really good. But let's, when we take a look at what we've been talking about recently, and that is Noah, and is it time to build the ark, and the baptism, and all this stuff. In order to try to get an understanding here, and I think you can relate to this, no matter who you are in your own life, that everything in existence evolves. And that's why when people dismiss the theory of evolution, it's ridiculous, because everything evolves. It evolves and it revolves, and it keeps changing. And even our social order evolves. The things we like are not necessarily the things we used to like. Things we dislike are not necessarily the things we used to dislike. And things change. Well, you take that on a individual level, and you look and say, things between me and my wife, or the kids, or in the house, they don't seem like they used to be, or they've changed, or I'm glad they changed, but something happened. There's a whole, it gets inside of us a whole different way of thinking. John and I were watching a couple of weeks ago these Dean Martin shows. Remember the Dean Martin roasts where all these people come on? And I was looking at them. I saw Jonathan Winters and Nipsey Russell and Milton Berle and Rowan and Martin and Dean Martin and Ruth Buzzy and all of these people, and they were spectacular people. They got up and they were so funny. And I looked at John and I said, you realize something? They've all disappeared. They're all gone. And I didn't mean by that. Obviously, it was a long time ago. Many of them have died, but that's not what I was meaning. I mean, there are no more Sid Caesars or Emma Jean Cocas or these. They disappeared. I mean, there were comedians and entertainers like that before them. W.C. Fields and these people that I'm talking about that we saw on television some years ago, Jackie Gleason and Art Carney and all these kind of people, they replaced them. But the Jackie Gleasons and all those kind of people, nobody replaced them. They just went away. They're gone. It's like movie actors, the Cary Grants and the Gary Coopers and the Jimmy Cagneys, Edward G. Robinson and Betty Davis. There was some, but it was like a whole different thing. If you look at the cars that we drive, when I was a kid, each car had a unique personality. I mean, when they brought out the new model, they'd have it draped with a thing over it, and then they'd lift it up, and it had fins, and it had things on the front in different colors, and I mean, it was really something. And it all went away. It all went away till everything now looks the same. I was a real country music nut. It was really wang stuff, but they had Hank Williams and Hank Snow and Lefty Frizzell and all of these guys, and they were unique characters. They're gone. You turn on a country station, they're not there anymore. It's almost like, so something, it all shifts. It's like, you hear a lot of times about people talking about a shift, an earth shift. Well, really, that's not a big deal because the earth always shifts. That's why you have earthquakes. And it's constant motion. It constantly shifts. The poles shift. But the thing is not so much the change that comes upon the physical earth itself. It's the change that it serves as a conduit to electromagnetism, and what goes on inside of here changes. So, in other words, there's a mass consciousness. Why are there no more comedians like the Milton Berles? Why are there no more Hank Williams? Why is the Cars? And why are there? Because there's a shift of the way people think. The shift of what people think is acceptable and so forth. And all of that changes, say. And it evolves, and we don't even know it. It just all of a sudden happens. It's like the internet. No, it's not there, then all of a sudden it's there. Where'd it come from? Who was the first one? I mean, and so when we start looking at that, we start to think, what changes things in your house? What changes things in you? What changes things is the mass mind. It's the way things, it's the thinking of the mind that changes things. You're either happy or unhappy because not only of the way you think, but you're thinking the way you think because of the way some others think. I mean, it's the way they think that makes you feel the way you do. See? I mean, everybody is scared to death of passing away. And the only reason you're afraid of passing away because of the impact it would have on those you would leave. You don't want, I mean, somebody that dies, It's the fact there's this separation. Let's say you were all alone. You had nobody. You had no relatives. You had nobody in the world. You were just like on top of a mountain. What would die? What's the difference? Because you die every night, you go to sleep. What's so? But it's this inner mind thing that happens between the mass mind and you and another individual mind. All of this stuff, it's all electrical impulses in the way, they activate within people. And what we get into then is you have shifts of electromagnetic fields and the angles of light that come down and impact on the brain. And it depends on the individual how you receive them. A stimulus of electrical magnetic energy may, in one person, cause a desire to do something different. It may cause another person to do something violent. See? Because it depends on how this thing is set up and where, that people is. If, for instance, you're taking your directions from, politicians or presidents or kings or something like this, well, the change then may be an impetus for you to want to attack, and all of a sudden, people fly planes into buildings, or people drop bombs and start wars, and it becomes very violent. And then other people, get radicalized in the opposite direction. So it depends on what is setting up the circuitry inside of you as to how you react to a particular thing. How do you react? Why do you feel the way you do? Why do you react the way you do? When people go to psychiatrists and psychologists, and they're very important. But if you get right down to it, you find out that, this television set only shows a black and white picture when it's hit by electricity. This one shows a color picture. That one may show a high definition picture. Why? Because they're different. And the electricity that enters into them creates a different thing, because that's the way they're made. So when we start thinking about all of these things, it's not necessarily you, but it is the environment of thought that is bombarding you all the time from others. And it's not just the people you live with. It could be when you turn the TV on. It could be when you go to work. I mean, and you get subject to all of these different kind of things. And then, you find yourself in the middle of this mass mind, either siding with one group or another, and it's hard for us to understand how it's all electrically generated, okay? And then we reach this point where we come in here and find out we really don't know how to operate this equipment that we exist in. We know how to operate the TV and the VCR, and we know how to operate the refrigerator, and we know how to operate the car, but we don't know how to operate ourselves. It's an electrical instrument. We have no idea how to operate it. And so it shorts out, it gets overheated, all these different kinds of things. It gets sick, and we don't, we don't know what to do, because what we then do is start taking instructions from other people. They have a shingle, so I'm a doctor, oh, he must know, and so I take this stuff, you know, and then you find out, well, gee, you know, I'm taking this stuff all my life or whatever, and you're never, ever, ever really reading the instruction book or letting the instruction book be read into you by a natural force of electromagnetism that changes your mind. Now, that's not going, you see, the thing is that you can meditate till the cows come home, and you can find yourself in this higher realm, and you can find this, you know, peace. But if you get home, and the other person isn't, it's still, you know, the effect is still going to be there. I mean, there were people, for instance, living, let's take the World Trade Center. There were people there that were at peace. They were just going about, they're probably joking and everything was wonderful. Probably had been to church, and, you know, they loved God and all this stuff. Oh, boom! All of a sudden, they're in an inferno of their making. They had nothing to do with that. There were people in Iraq sitting in their houses, watching TV, cooking, and making whatever kind of food they eat. The family and the father talking to the kid about doing better in school. All of a sudden, boom! Bombs are falling all over the place, and people were getting blown apart. They had nothing to do with this. See? And so, it has nothing to do with a God. It has nothing to do with, oh, Lord, bless this or don't bless this. That's all. That's nonsense. It has to do with the creation that is created and implemented as activity out of the mind, out of the mass mind. If the mind of the president says we're going to drop bombs over there, then regardless of what those people do, regardless of who they pray to, regardless of how much at peace they may be at their house, when those bombs drop, they're going to get blown up. They had nothing to do with it. You see what I'm saying? And so then, you know, we not only look at the way we think ourselves, we look at the whole mass mind, because, you know, it's like I'm in a rooming house, and I keep my room nice and clean and safe, and so I'm safe. No, because, you know, if somebody's smoking in bed in the room next to me, or if somebody's cooking on a hot burner, you know, and it could start a fire, it doesn't make any difference how good my room feels, because the rest of the rooms are totally out of my control, and they could cause an inferno that, you know, could cause me to die and so forth. And so we are utterly dependent then on the mass mind. We are utterly dependent on the minds that we come in contact to for our happiness and our civility and our health, really. See? And that's one of the things that we just lost our little dog Daisy, and one of the things I admired about that dog so much was this dog was almost like she lived almost in a meditation. This is what was so special about her, something like I've never seen any other dog. She would totally avoid any kind of trouble. She didn't want to know about it. She looked to the safety of where she would lay down. But the point is, like, if Joan and I ever raised our voices, if we had an argument and disagreed, what she'd do, she'd go and she'd walk and she'd push the door open and leave and go back and sit under a tree. She didn't want to be around anything like that, you know. And it was, in any kind of a conflict, upset her that, you know, she wasn't comfortable. And so it's the same thing that we're involved in, you know. We see ourselves get involved in conflicts like you have to take sides, whether you're in favor of bombing Iraq or if you're not in favor of, and then you align with one group or the other, and then you start saying you're in the middle of all of this thing, and this isn't the way it's supposed to be. There's something wrong, and yet all of these people, the ones that are bombing, the ones that are not bombing, they're all going to these religious places and saying there's some guy in the sky, you know, that they're going to bless them, and they're raising hell and destroying the place, and say, what in the world is wrong here? Something is absolutely not the way it should be. It's not good for us. It's not good for the animals. It's not good for children. So then, what am I left to do? So, how in the world can I, in some way, change the way I think and the way I am receptive to other electromagnetics coming from people in higher places? And then you get back to this Noah thing. See, this is what Noah's predicament was. He was in the middle, basically, of an insane asylum, which was the earth. How can you absolve yourself? How can you get at? How can you avoid this thing? And there's no way that you can. No matter what you do, there's no way. No, you can't figure it out. Right? So then you almost have to, out of desperation, turn in a different direction and say, you know, is there something other than presidents and politicians and pastors and, you know, all of this violence and killing and screaming and pillaging and raping that goes on? Is there, you know, if this was the way it's supposed to be, then, you know, it's a bad deal, but it's not. Right. And so you come to this point of nature itself. And nature then itself, you can see it hastening this evolution, this electromagnetic change, because one season gives way to another. Now, when you're on the earth, you look and you know there's a reason for the season. It's like it says in the book of Ecclesiastes, you know, a time for this and a time for that. Well, that's the way nature is, and that's where we totally misunderstand it. The entire Bible, from one end to the other, through the Old Testament to the New Testament, is mythology. It was ancient Sumerian mythology, ancient Egyptian mythology, and then it became Greek mythology. Okay? There's not one thing in there that literally happened. The whole thing is a myth. Not meaning in any way, shape, or form that it's not true, but meaning it means something different than what is written in the book. Even the book itself says that. Dark sayings, hidden meanings, parables, proverbs, all of these things. The University of Tel Aviv said that. The University of Tel Aviv in the middle of Israel says we went for 200 years looking for one thing, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No Exodus, none of the camping in the desert, none of what never happened. I'm sure they had tribes roaring around doing all this crazy stuff, but nothing. There's something else in the writings there, in this mythological book, and what it is, the entire thing, as Greek mythology, is talking about the interaction of electromagnetism impacting on the physical reality of nature and ourselves. That's all, for instance, that's all Noah is about. Noah is about the inside of your head and finding that ark, that place of safety in there, where nature then lifts you to a higher realm, where you then totally absolve yourself in a way from the impacts of the negativity that, you know, we're all being attacked with now. So, and it's just in the same way that we are touched by Earth season. There's a reason that there's a springtime. Generally, the springtime comes and dumps rain like crazy, preparing the ground for the summer. And then, you know, we have the flowers and the new life and the new animals and all of that stuff. And then when you go into the fall, and all of this recycles itself into the winter when everything goes to sleep, just like a big bear, it goes into its den and goes to sleep until the time comes for the next cycle of birth. Now, what is it? You know, we look at the prophecies of the Bible. Oh, these are very prophetic. They're nothing more than forecasts. Change the word prophecy to forecast. Well, how could they forecast? Very simple. Here's how I'll make a forecast. I would say in the month of August, there will be heat abounding. It's going to be hot. They said, well, how do I know that? Because that's the season. And I'll tell you something else. In January, it's going to be cold. And if we get the right temperature, which we will, and a storm, and it's cold enough, it'll be snow. If the temperature is up there, it'll be rain. And I can forecast all of this stuff. Well, all I'm talking about then is what's going to happen in a particular season. And I'm going to be absolutely right. There's going to be no doubt whatsoever about that. Now, if you take the 12 months of the year, and you know you got your seasons, well then you take the 12 constellations in the ecliptic of the zodiac, and you've got your 12 months of the cosmos, which is called the zodiac. And each one is a season. Well, your season may last 3 months or 4 months. The season of the zodiac lasts 2,600 years. So in other words, each season of the cosmos is different and has a different effect on us as do the seasons on the earth. Why is that so difficult? But yet we have this antiquated, embarrassing, religious thing that affects people and say, oh, don't look at that. That's astrology. Don't look at that. Even when the Bible says you should look at that. Let the stars be for signs. Can you bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades? All of these things. And yet the same people that say that they love the Bible turn their back on it totally and twist it and make it say what they want it to say. So you have a season on the earth, which is governed by the 12 months. You have a season of the cosmos, which is governed by the 12 signs. And you have a season inside of your head, which is governed by the 12 cranial nerves. And they're all interrelated with one another. And so it's not difficult for someone to make a forecast of a massive shift of consciousness to occur at a season of the cosmos in the same way that you're going to have a massive shift of what you wear in the season of the summer or the season of the winter. Things are going to completely change. What you do is going to be different. What you wear is going to be different. Where you go is going to be different. Totally. Comes the winter time, that season, and you see all these people get on the highways and they're going south and they're heading for, where are they all going? They're going to Florida. And then the season comes around. And then comes the spring. Here come the cars back up. Where are they going? They're going back up to the north. See, there's a change, a whole change in the way life goes on depending on the season. And so the forecast of the Bible says it's going to be a tremendous change because of the season. And how do they put it? It says, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, then there's going to be this Passover. There's going to be this tremendous change. And what that means is a new consciousness. It doesn't. Listen, there are no angels up in the sky. There are none. They're angles of light. Intelligent light, yes. Things that we can't quite comprehend. How can light be intelligent? How can light understand things? How in God's name can I be sitting up here talking and moving my hand? I mean, everything. Look at your body sometime, and if you want, get in and watch one of those operation shows on TV when they open people up and look inside and look at the mess that's in there. How can that mess know anything? It doesn't. It's just stuff. It's like opening the hood of your car. What's in there? Stuff. It doesn't know anything. It can't say anything, can't go anywhere. It needs something intelligent to get into it, and once the intelligence controls that car, all the stuff can go places. Once the intelligence comes in here and operates the computer and the machine, then it becomes viable. See? But it is the intelligence. It's the one that I am inside of this. It's the one that you are inside of here. It's the light. And it is that which will leave, it's that which comes in, it's that which is actually the catalyst for what we're discussing here, not physical bodies. So there are no people flying around with wings up in the sky. They're not there. They're angles of light that do descend and interact. Now, angles of light will seek bodies. That's all they do. Light beings, that we call them, are angles of light that seek bodies. And they find, but it's a natural thing. It's like nature, where different things of nature just have to do this or have to do that. It's a natural thing. It's instinctive that light beings seek bodies and take residence in bodies and operate them. And the people say to me, what is the next? Why are we alive? What are we supposed to do here? All you're supposed to do is exist. Just exist. You're supposed to enjoy your existence. Unfortunately, because of the mass mind and the fact that we have chosen to listen to the lower instead of the higher, we don't enjoy it. And in fact, we misuse it to the point where this beautiful, beautiful creation is literally raped and pillaged and destroyed for the sake of, the desires of people whose minds have been totally polluted by that which is the lower. So you get to this point and say, okay, and that's going to go on because the earth is going to be spinning millions of years. But when you see that man with a pitcher of water, something definitely is going to happen. Now, what happened already? Here's the man with the pitcher of water. About 100 years ago, somebody invented a light bulb. From that point on, things have been invented at a rate that as far supersedes anything that was invented for the first 50 skillion billion years. Nothing before. Just before 100 years ago, I mean, they were riding around in horse and buggies and riding with candles and all of this. It was a whole different thing. They passed over to an entirely different and new consciousness based on the man with the pitcher of water. See? And so we started inventing, and we're still inventing, things that if you talk to people 100 years ago and told them about the stuff that you have now, whether it be computers or they say, you're crazy. You can't have such things like that. So one season gives way to another, just as right now we're in the spring, and the spring is ready to give way to the summer. Okay? June 21st, the spring gives way to the summer. And then the summer will give way to the fall, and the fall will give way to the winter, and the cycle keeps going and going and going. It's the circle of life. It's the cycle of life. It's the mass consciousness involved in the middle of all of this that moves with it. So there's no more Sid Caesars, and there's no more Milton Berles, and there's no more cars with fins and all of this stuff, because the cycle has went on, and the cycle changed. And the feelings change, and the mind changes, desires change, and so forth and so on. And that's the way things are. One gives way to another. The same thing occurs over again, but in a larger essence. All has its season. You say, well, the violence now. There's always been violence. Well, yeah, but the violence in the old times used to be with knives and pistols. Now, smart bombs can come right in your mailbox. I mean, it's crazy. And it's got to the point where the violence is extreme. So always think of Ecclesiastes of the Bible. There's a time, there is a season. And when that time and season arrives, the change occurs. And there is no living thing that can alter it. You can pray, you can meditate, you can do whatever you want, but you'll never be able to change the season. When the weather is cold and the storm comes, it snows. Nothing can change that. Nothing can do anything about it. It's natural. It's the way things are. There's nothing religious about it. If you open the Bible, and this is the terrible part of the Bible, people open the Bible and look at it as a religious, holy thing. There is nothing holy about it. There is nothing religious about it. It's talking about nature, the interactions of nature, and how it all works. It's talking about the mind, your thoughts. That's what it's about. It's about seasons. The entire Bible is about seasons. The seasons that will have their effect on your life. The seasons that will come right on time. The seasons that no one can change. It doesn't make any difference how powerful a country is. They can't change the seasons. And the 12 months of the year make up the seasons of the earth. The 12 signs and the 12 constellations in the trajectory of the sun make up the seasons of the cosmos. And the 12 cranial nerves in your brain make up the seasons of your personality. And all these things that we read in the Bible and talk about prophecies are simply forecasts outlining what will occur in various seasons of the earth and various seasons of the cosmos. There's no religion involved here. We're talking about what is true, what is natural, what happens. Okay? Very, very straight, very, very forward, no question about it. This is what's going to happen. And if you say, well, Aquarius, that's a season. If you think, well, I'm not sure if I'm not into that, well then, you're not sure if you're into the seasons of the earth either. But I'll tell you this, when you put your bikini on in January, you're going to find out that it wasn't a good idea because the seasons have an impact. And in the same way, Aquarius, whatever season of the cosmos it may be, has an impact, only a far greater impact, because it not only impacts a particular region of the earth, it impacts the entire universe. Okay. The stories in the Bible, in both the Old and New Testament, are Greek mythology. They are no different than the classic Greek myths, which use symbols to describe the workings and the results of natural change. In Greek mythology, you'll have a war god here colliding with a war god here, bringing destruction on the earth. When actually they're talking about a temperature variation here and a temperature variation here, and when the two collide with one another, there is destruction on the earth, because what they're really talking about is a cyclone or a tornado or a hurricane or something like that. But they use God's names in order to spell out how nature works. And you say, well, why didn't they just come out and talk about, because the people at the point when this was written were not evolved to understand this stuff. They didn't know about these things. They didn't know about atoms. They didn't know about electrons. They didn't know about the movings of nature. So all of this was laid out so that when people evolved, they would then understand it and then be able to flow with it as they grew, as they matured. And you say, well, gee, I wasn't very fair to the people back then. The people back then are the same people as the people now. See what I'm saying to you? Because what happened? The body dies, people get out of the body, go get another one. What do you do when your car can't go anymore? You take it to the junkyard. But I hope you don't stay in it. Of course not. What do? You get out of it, you go get another one. So all of these natural forces exist. A specific personality, maybe yours, responding to a stimulant, regardless of what that may be, can result in a tremendous storm. If you have hot and you have cold and they collide, you can have a tornado or whatever. Well, you can have inside of yourself, say, you might be cold. In other words, it's the way you are. Everything's all right. Yeah, I don't want to get involved. A stimulant comes, heat, whatever it may be. Somebody says something. Somebody does something. It collides with, that's inside of you, the hot and the cold collide, bang, and the next thing you got a storm. And it's not a storm, it's not a tornado in the sense of the word, but in your head it's a tornado, in your head it's a cyclone, in your head it's a hurricane, and it can wreak destruction. And it depends how heavy duty that is as to how great will be the destruction that will ensue. If you happen to be a president of a country, then it can be a lot more destruction than just in your house. I mean, you might destroy or you might hurt somebody in your house, but if you have power over thousands or millions of people, you can hurt and destroy thousands or millions of people. See? And it all depends on what's going on in here. And if the religious groups and political groups, if they mislead people, and if they're not being right as to how they should read Bibles and stuff like that, or Korans and stuff like that, what gets into people? Then when the stimulant comes, they're ready for war. See? But if, on the other hand, they had been instructed from this higher level and were cutting off on that lower political and president kind of thing, then when the stimulant comes, there's a different way of handling it, and it doesn't result in the chaos that we see in where we live now. And that's what the problem is all about. So natural forces exist inside of your head. Natural forces exist on the planet Earth. Natural forces exist in the universe. Okay? What we've put together as religion and what we are following as religion, we go through all these crazy things that have no impact on anything. What these things are is nothing more than misinterpreting the nature of things. And we make it into all this, holy this and holy that, and I got robes on, I'm ringing bells and all this kind of stuff. And all we are really trying to come to grips with is the movement of the earth and the cosmos in an electrical field, and trying to see how do our bodies and our minds interact with this electricity so we don't go cutting each other's heads off. But what do we, instead of understanding it intelligently and maturely, we turn it into religions, and we all have a different interpretation, and you got Muslims and Jews and Christians, and they hate each other's guts anyhow, and they kill each other, and so we have a need then to somehow pull away from all of that stuff. The collision between us And the external stimulant, no matter what it may be, it may come from your friend, it may come from your wife or husband, it may come from a child, it may come from the governor, it may come from a councilman, it may come from a president, it may come, God knows who it's going to come from. But it can be an external stimulant that really causes you to have a cyclone or a tornado inside of your head. So we see this change in our social structure that we talked about earlier, the way we think, the way we act, different than it used to be. And we try to understand, gee, it's not like the old days. I wonder what, it's not like the way things used to be. And yet we didn't change anything. We get consumed, we get caught up. It's like, you go into the ocean, and you're putting a little water on it, and all of a sudden a wave comes and plow, you're spinning all over the place. What happened? Because you get just caught up in the whole thing and you ride along. You get swept along like a leaf in the fall. You just blow with the whole thing. And you're miserable. And you're not a happy person. And you don't understand why things are the way they are. And it's simple, basic thing is you don't understand the natural order of the electrical elements and how they were created and how they were supposed to interact with us, because we have been totally misled by the lower mass mind who has a need to control and exploit. So we get to this point now, and we can deal with this and say there are no angels in the sky. Now, do you know how many people would come screaming and say, oh, you can't say that. My Aunt Tilly saw an angel, and I saw an angel, and all this kind of stuff. The angel is a photon. It is an angle of light. Here's the point now. You ready for this one? Angles of light, photons, are people. Angles of light, light particles, are people. You are a person. You are a light. What you see here, and what I'm looking at, what you're looking at, is a body. That's not a person. The car is not a driver. The driver's in the car. When the car goes through the red light, the cop doesn't give the car the ticket. It gives the ticket to the driver. And you can't say, excuse me, officer, this stupid car, I told it not to do it, but it did it anyhow. You can't do that. So it depends on the driver as to what's going to take place. What I'm saying to you is, just as the Bible says God is light, you are light. Light in the sky, light beings in the sky without a body are people. When they take on a body, they can be a human being, only because they're inside of a body. When you get inside of a car, you become a driver. When you're outside of the car, you're a pedestrian. You're not a driver anymore. So it depends on where you are. Right now, you are a person, light, inside of a body. You're driving this thing, And so there's the key to this whole thing. People are light beings. People are light particles. Bodies are bodies. They're things. They're equipment. When a light being, a person, able to think, able to understand, when that person gets into a body, it becomes a being, a human being. When that person gets out of the body, they put the body in a ditch. Throw it in the ground. It ain't no good. And you know what happens to that? It disintegrates and becomes hedges and crabgrass and stuff. What is that? What is that? How does hedges and crabgrass know good stuff? It doesn't know anything. If I sit with my computer, say, oh boy, that website is terrific. That computer doesn't know anything. That computer sitting in my house is a stupid piece of plastic and junk. It doesn't know anything until a person comes to input it. Your body is nothing but a bunch of junk. The whole thing, if you took it, put it, and tried to sell it, it'd be worth about $1.65. $1.65. What is this? But when a person gets inside of it, it becomes a big deal. That's life. Hey, life. Life is always. This body's got a built-in escape hatch called the right angular gyrus that when it's about to deep six, that thing springs open just like a catapult on a jet plane, you know, and the light gets out of it. The person gets out of it. So a person is not a body. A person is light. See? Well, do you ever say, I go along sometimes, you know, we kid around and I can all of a sudden start thinking of names, words of songs from long ago. You know, if I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake. Remember that song? And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, Eileen Barton sang that. I don't know from Eileen Barton. How does that all of a sudden, where did that come from? Inside of all this mess inside of your head, all this gooey stuff, is Eileen Barton? I don't think so. Where is it? It's the light. It's the impulse. It's out here. So it knows all that stuff. So the brain was, oh, well, no, it's the brain. The brain. Look, President Ronald Reagan has an advanced case of Alzheimer's, and he doesn't know. He doesn't even know who his wife is. And, you know, these are terrible things. But here's the situation. He is absolutely as capable as he ever was. He is sharp. He knows what he wants. He knows what he does. But what's the problem? The computer that he has to use to communicate to you and me is burned. And he can't use it. Do you know how it's frustrating it is for a person inside of one of those things? And everybody says, oh, look, he doesn't recognize anybody. He recognizes everybody. He understands everybody, but he cannot communicate it. It's like sitting with the computer, and I'm typing the keys and everything, and nothing's going on because the plug's not in the wall. Okay? Do you understand? And I mean, what I'm saying is, it's like Albert. When Albert had his stroke, he couldn't talk. And he said, oh, he's going to be a vegetable. Oh, he can't talk. But Albert was inside saying, like, how am I going to be a vegetable? What are you, crazy? I'm in here. Albert said, he was very alert. He was very aware. He knew what was going on. But to the people outside, all they could, it was nothing. See? So the person is not the body. The person is not the brain. The person is the light. And I've showed you stuff. How light is intelligent. All of your memories are not in the brain. Your memories are stored there by the light when the light wants to transmit them. But your memories are outside, in the light. So you are a light being inside of a body. And the reason you don't know how to deal with that, you don't know how to get out of it, you don't know how to work it, is because you've never studied it. You have never done what was instructed by those who came down to this earth thousands of years ago. Instead, we follow all these crazy people, and they sprinkle water on their head, and they're throwing smoke around and all this kind of stuff. And for what? So that's the problem. So we know then, you and I are light, we're not bodies. Bodies are bodies, and when we get inside of them, we operate them and so forth. So when the universe then evolves into different positions, it sets up different angles of electromagnetic waves that impact the Earth. And the electrical mechanism of the brain is impacted, and as a result, it changes things. And the mass mind changes. The way we all think changes. And we don't even know, we just get swept up. The entire Bible, which is a magnificent document of coded material about life, how it works, the universe, the human mind, all of this stuff has been turned into silly rituals. And it's actually a mythological scientific journal outlining how nature interacts with the brain and the mind. Look, I told you this before. trying to explain it to people, the Greeks, who wrote the whole doggone Bible, set up 5 stages of consciousness as earth, which is your head. The second stage, which you enter into meditation, water. The third stage, which when you rise above the thoughts of the mind, air. The fourth stage, when you rise up through the air to the fire. And then the fifth stage is the new mind. Every doggone story in the Bible focuses around that. Everything that you see. There's fire on the mountain of God. They're talking about the top of your head. Okay? That's what it's all about. He casts down fire under the earth. That means when in meditation you reach that fourth level of consciousness, the fire then is able to purge out all of that fear and hate and sickness and all of that crap. Do you understand that? See? That's what it's talking. Look, the energy rises up the spine through the 7 nerve centers. It really does. I mean, that's the way it goes. It flows up through the spinal canal. They say there's 7 chakras. Well, that's a mythological thing too, but that's for another time. But it goes up, and then when you go into meditation, you go up, 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 up. Now, what happens in the Bible? Where does Moses go? Moses, it says in the Bible, goes to the backside of the desert. What the heck is the backside of the desert? The backside of the desert's your spine. He goes up to the mountaintop, and when he gets to the top of the mountain, what happens? He meets a burning bush. What's that? That's the 4th level of consciousness. In Greek, it's fire. That's what that is all about. That's what the burning bush is, and so forth and so on. What does he get up there? Hi, you're Bush? Yes. What's your first name? George. that was a joke. Well, he is on the top of the mountain, and he's pretty hot stuff, but anyhow. But see, do you understand? So there was no burning bush. There was no backside of the mountain or the desert. It's talking about this. And it goes through the whole thing. John the Baptist comes along. He's this. He's the second stage. I baptize with water. Jesus comes along. He's this. He's the next stage. I baptize with fire. You see? And so the whole book, then, is built around nature. I had a guy that wrote me on the internet, which I'll give another plug for our website, www.hiddenmeanings.com. But I had a person write to me and say, do you really think that Jesus really thought that people could understand what he was talking about? And I told him no. Jesus is a mythological figure. Jesus represents that higher form of light. And the words that were given in the scriptures to be spoken by Jesus were actually coded symbols that could only be decoded when people had evolved to the point of scientific understanding where we are now. See, everything has to grow. Everything has to become strong. I mean, what happens? If you plant a seed in the ground, tomorrow there doesn't come a tree. What happens? Little things shoot up. And then they get bigger and bigger and bigger. It takes years. It could take hundreds of years. It could take thousands of years. And finally you got a giant sequoia. You think that sequoia tree grew in a week? Of course not. It takes thousands of years. Well, the human mind takes millions of years. And that's what happened. It took thousands and thousands of years. And all of this stuff was laid out for people when they became intelligent to be able to understand this stuff. And once we can break away from religion that keeps people under the superstitions of studying symbols and thinking the symbols, once we can break through that, then this stuff is ready to bring the entire earth out of this nightmare that we live in and into a whole new different understanding of what we call this Krista consciousness, this higher level of thinking, and this freedom from the slaughter that we've been exposed to. And so we've reached that point now where we can understand. And that's why so many people say go into the church. And you go in, and you know that you're going in there, and you know that that stuff is not true, what you're being told. But you know what? You can't do anything about it, because if you said that I don't believe this stuff, your family gets ticked off, and you know it's like your nationality. Your family can't deal with it. So rather than get ostracized, everybody marches in and sits down and throws in the money and says, because otherwise you get in trouble with the family if they told the truth. Anyhow, we've been working on several subjects that are part of the forecasts given by light beings so that we can prepare to deal in the physical body with cosmic change coming upon the earth. And we can begin to benefit by that. And one of the things that we came up with was Noah interacting with the knowledge of the storm. Now, are we mature enough to realize Noah never existed? Okay? Once we get to that point, and we don't go up to Mount Ararat looking for pieces of wood, once we get to that point, we say, Noah never existed, then we realize that what it's talking about is that light inside of these bodies who can listen and hear something that everybody else is not hearing and rise out of that. So can we then take the second part after we get done with Noah, knowing that Noah, according to the Bible, is a symbol of baptism, and then we find out, hey, can we move away from wetting people's heads and get into the real baptism? What baptism means in the scriptures, that you take your head, the earth. In meditation, you rise into the water, which is the second stage of consciousness. Okay? Then you move up into the third stage of consciousness, which is the air, and you are touched by the fourth stage, which is fire, and the pneuma. There's baptism. That's real baptism. Now I throw this question out to everybody. You tell me, if there's a God up in the sky, is he or she or it or whatever it is more interested in you having your mind renewed and changed and elevated in a meditative baptism, or would this God prefer that you got your head wet? What turns this God on? Water dripping down your face? Or a new mind that turns you away from the bedlam that you exist in the particular culture that you live? Even common sense tells you that. So that meditative baptism, which changes and elevates the mind, is what was prescribed and is acted out throughout the entire scriptures. There won't be a destruction by water. Next time it'll be fire. Of course, because the water has already come. The man with the pitcher of water is here, and next time it's fire. And then we dwell in this month of Aquarius, one of the 12 cosmic months. We have to understand that it is now a season that has been forecasted for us in the same way that you have a guy come on television telling you the forecast for Central Jersey or Eastern New York. There's a front moving in from the back, and the top's coming in, and the waves and all this kind of stuff. How does he know that? Because the way it moves. Do you know that weather forecasters can forecast storms when the storm hasn't even formed yet? There's nothing there, but there will be. We expect a storm to form over here because of the way everything's moving. And you know what? Doggone it, it forms. And the next thing you know, winds are blowing and all this kind of stuff. How did he know that? Because he understands the nature of it. In the same way is the nature of the mind, the nature of your head. When you understand it. And it is not, people say, I'll never be able to understand this. You don't have to study anything. If you enter into this meditative baptism where you are taken upward to this higher levels of consciousness, it's done for you. Do you have to eat your ziti and understand how it gets digested? Well, let's see, I'll put it in here. Where's it going to go? I got to check this out. I don't know how to. You don't have to know nothing. You stuff it in, and then whatever happens. What do you do with your hair? My God. Well, but your hair just grows, doesn't it? What do you have to do with it? What the heck do you have to do with it? If you want to cut it, you can cut it. But otherwise, it grows or it doesn't grow, and it's none of your business. It's the same with this. The mind, the change comes. The mass mind's going to change. Your mind's going to change. The storm's going to come. You got to be Noah. You got to get baptized. But you got to be baptized in the meditative baptism so that you can not only be baptized in water, but you can be baptized in fire. So we took all of this, we placed it together in a sequence to determine if there was a need to move our attention in a different direction. And we found that, of course, there have been violent occurrences on the planet. There's always been violent occurrences on the planet. But you know the difference is, now the violent occurrences on the planet are extremely severe because of the level we've evolved in making weapons and bombs. But in addition to that, the violence in the planet is taking place in Aquarius. Okay? That's never happened before. Not in our, you know. So we have weapons now, and we're in Aquarius, so that means the combination of those two foretell quite a change, which they didn't in the past. So we have to look and we have to put that together. My goodness gracious, if you had, what do you need if you have your bikini bathing suit in December or January? It's not going to do you any good. You have to get something else. See? So I mean, there's a connection. There's a connection between the forces and the reaction that you have. In the same way here, we have the violence, but now we have Aquarius. And if you want to tell me, well, I don't believe in astrology, I don't really care, I mean, you do whatever you want, but if you think you can walk around on this planet being bombarded by electromagnetic fields as it is, and the change is whipping around in the universe, and you're not in any, and this electrical thing you got in your head is not impacted in any way, then you're just, you know, you're religious. Oh, you know, what can you do with religion? So we looked then, and we looked at these violent occurrences on the Earth. We looked that many of these violent occurrences on the Earth, in fact, all of them are with people who have different religious allegiances. We observed the appearance of strange signs in the heavens via Hubble. And we found that these signs in the heavens that Hubble has seen are very important because of the fact that they have connections with the Bible. It's weird, but they have connections with the Bible. Because why? Because the Bible's not a religious book anyhow. The Bible's an astronomical book. The Bible's an astrological book. The Bible's a symbolic book. The Bible's a scientific book. It's nothing to do with religion. And so when it starts talking about these signs up in the sky, it's talking from an astronomical basis. My God, I mean, a lot of the Bible, according to what we see now, could have been written by somebody from NASA. Where are we? Oh, yeah? See, it's printed right on there, right? Okay. It's printed right on. 3 minutes, yeah. 3 minutes. Okay, you didn't let this happen again. He's not, you know, he's okay, real quick. Real quick now, because we got 3 minutes and we'll run this out, then we have to do this again. Real quick, overhead B234. This is all I want to show you. I was showing you before. I just want to show you again. What this 1 Peter 3:20 says, talking about this, it talks about the ark was being prepared, and it's saying it's a light figure of baptism. So the Bible says that Noah and baptism are the same thing, that they're connected. There's a symbolism between the two of them. There's a symbolism between the two of them. Then we explained the true nature of baptism, which I've explained to you here. Now, people have taken this, the Greek foundation of the Bible, which you can see, you know, I mean, they've taken this and they've changed it into, you get your head wet in the water and you come out of the water into the air and God comes down and does all this funky stuff and you all feel good. And I'll tell you what a bunch of baloney that is. If you go to any prison in the world, you'll find out that most of the people in prison have been baptized with water. Okay, so here's the true baptism. We got something going on here. We got some water baptism taking the place of true meditative baptism. Okay, and so there, once we covered that, we not only confirmed that Noah and baptism were connected, but we also confirmed that the Bible itself said we shouldn't get involved anymore in this water baptism. Okay, real quick, overhead B200. I mean, 2 seconds, okay? Leaving the principles of the doctrines. In other words, no more of this stuff. No more laying on foundation of repentance, none of this stuff. Get away, no more, let us go on to perfection. No more doctrines of baptisms. You know, and why is that in there? Why is that so important? Why is he saying it? Because he says people are getting their head wet. That's not what was intended. Get away from that. Don't get your head wet, get your mind changed. That's what's important, you see. And then, what I told you before in the New Testament scriptures, we have John who represents the water, we have Jesus who represents the fire. They're symbols. They represent, these are the things inside of you. That's why it's given to Jesus, say, you know, I'm in you. Why? Jesus, the name represents the fire. What happens when your meditation raises you? People that are in this room that come into meditation, that we have on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock, are going to eventually, very soon, have this experience. Why? Because they know about it. And they know now they know what's going to be happening. See? They understand it. And there's a time that you just do the thing. There's a time you practice this thing. Then there's a time you get to the point where you understand the thing. And then it brought us to, where are we now? It brought us to the end. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.